So welcome. Today is October 28th, and Cameron, you're right below me. So can you hear and see me?
Yes.
Excellent. I guess we can hear and see you. So it's a pretty rainy day here in Boston for those of you on Zoom, and I am pretty excited because 5 people actually showed up. That's pretty darn good. There's been a number of other professors I passed in the corridor and they were shaking their head. There was one guy who was like, no one showed up. Why did I bother coming in? Why didn't we just run it over Zoom? So I'm very proud that we have 5 people today and 4 people earlier today. What are we going to do today? Today we're going to finish up the idea of multiple dummy variables, and we're going to do 2 things. First, we're going to create a bunch of multiple dummy, or maybe second. Second, we're going to create a bunch of multiple dummy variables for the Brookline condo data. In particular, we have this column, and this column has type of building, and it has things like decker, high rise, mid rise, low rise, and we're going to create a number of dummy variables there. So hopefully you feel comfortable creating multiple dummy variables beyond just movie genre. The other thing I wanted to talk about today, and we're going to do this sort of out of order, is that when you look at a data file, there is oftentimes more information in that data file than you first think. Many undergraduates who are learning about regression analysis assume that if there's a column of data, that's all that's there. And if there isn't data in a column, well, not much we can do about it. But there is more information than meets the eye in these things. Why is this important? First, when you get into the real world, people really like individuals who understand quantitative methods and regression analysis. Some of the hottest jobs right now are for data analysts, especially when getting out of school. But the second thing is, you have project part B coming up. Yes, I know, I hang my head in shame. I have not finished grading project part A. It is taking forever. I get it, I understand it. I feel guilty every morning when I wake up and I plow through a couple more, all right? But project part B has, like project part A, some very specific questions you're supposed to answer. And then the last question is sort of like, do whatever you want. And people are always like, well, what does do whatever you want mean? It's sort of like, well, you have some data. What interests you? And one way to do whatever you want is to look at the data and say, oh, we can create new things, new piece of information from the same data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example of creating new pieces of information from the same data set. And then I'm going to put you in breakout rooms and let you chat for 4 or 5 minutes with each other and go, we can come up with our own pieces of data. Does that make sense? So I'm going to open up the class website. Let me pick share screen. Share screen. Let me log in. For those of you who are faster, we're just going to open up Brookline condo data. I'm going to go to our class website, resources. Under resources are data files. And under data files, file we want is Brookline condo data. Open it up. Let me stop sharing that and start sharing Excel. And let me I'll put my cursor here at M1. So here's an example of a new column of data we could create. All of you are young, healthy, and relatively mobile, and you don't really care about how many flights of stairs you have to walk up and down. But, well, there's a Davis who's sitting here in front of me. He goes, I don't know.
Like 3, 4.
All right, so Davis says max 3 or 4. There's a number of people who are older where stairs are really a problem. Think about elderly people. So one of the things we could do is we could create a column called ease of access. And what's the idea of ease of access? somebody who has mobility issues can get in and out relatively easily. Maybe there's a step or two, but in general, it's not like Davis is saying 4 flights to walk up and down. So is there any ease of access information here in the data file? I'm going to argue yes, there is. And how could we create an ease of access variable where 1 is, yeah, it seems pretty easy to access, and 0 is, nah, this seems like a tough one. So I think you guys already know it. Let's try and get somebody online. Somebody online? Anybody? No?
I would say based off of like what
Tell me
floor.
who you are. Is this, sounds like Jada. Is that Jada?
Hi, I would go based off of like the floor number.
Floor number, okay. That's pretty good. Anybody else online?
If there's like an elevator.
All right. So if there's an elevator, so floor number and elevator. So let's start our if statement. Ease of access. Equal if, left parenthesis, and then we put an or. Okay. Is there an elevator? So if G2 is, what do we want to say for G2? All right, so Jared says equal to 1. Put out a 1, otherwise put out a 0. Sorry.
Greater than 1.
All right. So a bunch of people just said greater than 1. Why greater than 1? Let me hit escape for a second. If we look, for example, at row 8, how many different elevators are in the building at row 8? 6 elevators in that building. That's pretty amazing because questrom only has 4, right? Yes? Oh, okay. Actually, questrom has 7. There's 3 on the west wing, but students can't use the west wing. And there's actually only 3 on the east wing, even though when you're standing in the lobby, there looks like there's 4 doors. Because one's a service elevator. You ever notice there's one elevator you've never been on among that 4? Yeah, it's the back left corner. Never been on that, right? Oh, I've only been on 3. I wonder how. So that other one on that first floor actually leads to the loading dock. So, all right, don't matter. Anyways, so what's our if statement? Equal if, I see chats going by. Is there anything I should pay attention to? Oh, equal if, great. Or, left parenthesis, G2 is greater than or equal to 1. All right, that would be the first one. Let's go back to Jada. Jada, what should we do for floors for ease of access?
I would say if it's like less than the second floor, so anything that is
All right.
below.
So Jada's saying something like, comma, E2 is less than 2. Close parenthesis, put out a 1, otherwise put out a 0. And this first one has an elevator, so yeah, that makes sense. Let's put our cursor in the bottom right corner and double click. And we got a bunch of 1s and 0s. Let me ask you, are you getting something similar? How do you know if you did something exactly the same as I did? I'm going down here to the very bottom, and I'm going to type equal average, left parenthesis, M2 colon M1086, and I got 0.672811. It's a confirmation that you and I got the same number. Does that make sense while we're doing it? And what does that say? It says of the condos sold in Brookline, 2/3, for those who want precision, 67.8%, 2/3 have easy access according to our definition, and 1/3 don't have easy access. Does that make sense? Questions on Zoom? Tell me what's going on.
I must have done something wrong. So I got, for my average, I got 0.35.
0.35. Yeah. So here is the equation that we just did. We got, look at the G column and see if it's greater than or equal to 1, and look at the E column and see if it's less than 2. All right, well, sorry, you can, if you put it up on the screen, it would be easy.
Yeah, no, it's like it's exactly the same.
All right.
I'll figure it out.
Anybody else have any problems? Casey's online for help. For those of you with Zoom, you can share your screen or cut and paste things. She's a genius at Excel. All right, so we have ease of access. What I'd like to run right now is a regression. I'll give you a 1.5-minute head start. And what is our Y variable? Our Y variable is sale price. And our X variable is ease of access. We won't add anything else, just ease of access. Should we add other things in a real model? Yes, but we're just trying to see, does ease of access even make sense in a regression before we like create the full model. So run a regression. Y is sale price. M is ease of access. Yeah, you can, but just slowly just read it out to me.
I think I realized I must have typed it in incorrectly because on the first row, I'm not getting a 1.
Okay.
I have equals if, open parentheses, or close parentheses.
Well, it should be another open parenthesis.
Or open, excuse me. Yeah.
Okay.
If G2 is greater than or equal to 1, comma, E2 is less than 2, close them, comma, 1, comma, 0, close.
Okay. Thank you, Casey. Please pat yourself on the back and give yourself full class contribution. Oh, wait, you already did well in the course. All right. So real quick, we're going to pick data, data analysis, regression. Pick OK. The Y range is the A column, sale price. And the X range is the M column. Well, you can do it. Sorry, the cursor is not working right now. Yep, there it goes. And we have labels in the first row. We'll pick OK. And we got a couple of numbers here. Wow, that's really interesting. Why is that really interesting? Because I got very different results an hour ago. That's really interesting. I had a nice positive t statistic. I had a coefficient of $44,000. My t statistic now is less than 1. My coefficient is 11,000. I wonder what just happened here. Let me pick data analysis again. Maybe I messed up just a little bit. And I thought we were using pretty much the same if statement. Looks good. All right. It is what it is. Try and figure out the differences. What's the takeaway here? The takeaway is that not only do you sometimes have problems following, even I have problems following my own lectures, right? Let's jump back to the data set. There was a small difference between what I did this morning and what I said was, is E2 equal to 1? E2 is equal to 1. Let's see if that makes a difference. So I just changed it. E2 equals 1 and G2 is greater than or equal to 1. It lowered it to 64% from 67. So that suggests that there are a couple of places where the number of floors might be very different. Let's run the regression again. Data analysis. Okay. Now we're back to the results I got at home and the results I got in the first class. So the T statistics are both significant at the 95% level, both coefficients are significant at the 95% level. And the coefficients suggest that people are willing to pay about $45,000 more for ease of access. On Friday, we're going to be looking at the R-square and adjusted R-square. But they're relatively low, and what I'm going to say on Friday is this suggests that this equation does not explain real estate prices very well, and I would say, yeah, that makes sense. Ease of access is important for some people, but not super important for explaining real estate prices. It's a little, it's like, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So with the coefficients, is this formula suggesting that at the 487 for each elevator that a person has additional, you would multiply that number? Because I don't really know if that's true necessarily. So say like they have 2 elevators, would it then go from 44,000 to, let's say, 88,000?
Can you see the screen, Harrison?
Yes.
Great. So the ease of access is a dummy 0, 1. We didn't put elevators in there. So we just said, does it have an elevator or not, or is it on the ground floor?
Oh, okay. So it's not the number of elevators.
No, it's just,
okay.
If there is an elevator or it's on the ground floor, we pay an extra 44,000. If it's not ease of access, you have to walk up some floors and it doesn't say how many, then you're willing to pay less.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So what we're seeing is that ease of access is kind of important. So think about it right now. I'm going to send everybody off into breakout rooms. What other types of data could we create from this? So what we did is we just created this new variable, ease of access. There was no ease of access before, but we were able to look at the data and say, oh, there's other things in there. Does that make sense? So instead of just taking what's there as face value, we say we can actually create new things, take more information out. So I'm going to send you off into breakout rooms, and I'll see everybody in. Any questions before I do send you off into breakout rooms? I'm going to create 8 breakout rooms. And please, A, remember your breakout room number, and B, give somebody the job of reporting back for what your breakout room is. And we'll see you in a couple of minutes. I was wondering, can I grab that chair? Oh, this is great. Why didn't I do this before?
Are you gonna sit down for that one?
Well, the problem is I'm 6'6", and leaning on this tiny keyboard is like killing me. I walk home, I'm always like, how was class? I said, students are amazing, but my back is killing me from like hunching over a keyboard. Yeah, this is the dining room. They want to go back to a dining room as fast as possible at the university, instead of asking for a motorized mechanical desk. Why'd they put us in here? So what the university wants is like an hour and a half between classes, so that if there's somebody with COVID,
That just isn't true, because there's literally the class walks out as we walk in.
So,
And there's like the other room next to us is completely locked.
yeah, no, I don't understand why they didn't put us in the next room. I thought they were supposed to put us in the next. I think they did all this manually, and I think somebody messed up. I think we were actually supposed to be in the next room over, so that they want these gaps in all the classes. And I think someone just typed in the wrong number, that we're supposed to be there, not here.
Either this class or the class before is supposed to be.
Yeah, right.
Can you request the room that we go in and we have a meeting?
404.
Yeah,
Seem more comfortable.
Just send me an email and I'll talk to.
I love how we're doing this right now.
Yeah.
It's like probably less class time left, right? Yeah, we're like halfway through the semester and figuring this out.
Oh, yeah, no, they actually told us back in August that they were trying to give hours gaps between classes. So, and I've always walked by going, why is there somebody in this class right before us? And the gap is so that building and ground come in and spray the classrooms with a little bit of bleach. I don't know if you've seen the guys walk around with the big packs on their back with yeah, and they're spraying. Yeah. All right, let's bring everybody back. All right, for those of you watching on tape, the breakout rooms will close in about 50 seconds and we'll hear some ideas. And yes, I'm from Boston, so idea, there's an R at the end of ideas. We drop R's in some words and we add it to the ends of others. R in the middle of the words are always dropped. R's at the end of the words are always added. Unless there's already an R at the end of the word, then you drop that too, like star, S-T-A-R, is star. There's actually a pattern, a method to the madness. Oh, this is actually pretty good, because normally when I watch the tape of myself, all you see is my neck and the top of my head. You can actually see you can see me. No, you've never watched the tapes of these classes? No, no. Tarkin, go ahead.
I said whether or not the condo was a studio or not. So like depending on the room numbers, if it's more.
All right. So one of the examples would be studios. You know, maybe there's a difference between studios and non-studios, and we have the ability to do that. Excellent job. Please pat Tarkin, please pat yourself on the back, and Casey, please give him full credit for today. Anybody else? Faizan.
So we spoke about if it's a family house or if it's not, and then using the number of bedrooms and bathrooms as kind of like a indicator of that by setting a cutoff.
All right, so could you give me just sort of, it doesn't have to be exact, but what would you think a family house would be? Suitable for a family. So we had studio versus family house. What would give me, if you were to sort of say if.
So I'd probably say like it has probably 3 bedrooms or more and then 2 bathrooms.
All right, so at least 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. That's pretty good. All right, Jared in front of me has his hand up.
We said to add something to the ease of access category, like garage parking.
All right, so ease of access, including garage parking, because while it might be easy to access you, today we're in a sort of a mobility situation where you definitely need a car. All right, Anya. Ooh, being close to public transportation. So there's a lot of other things besides Beacon Street. There's the D line runs through Brookline, and there's also bus lines. So close to that. Somebody else online had their hand up. I'm sorry, I don't remember who, but go ahead. Anybody from breakout room number 6? Anybody from breakout room number 8?
So we were talking about like appliances and whether or not a unit has its own independent washer and dryer as opposed to like just being in the building.
Excellent, excellent. But from this data set, is there any way we can tell whether there's a washer dryer in the unit versus washer dryer in the building?
Oh, no, I didn't know it had to be part of like the the data. Sorry.
Okay, great. So breakout room 2. How about breakout room 4?
We talked about maybe a penthouse if it's in a high rise and over, say, 1,000 square feet and maybe above a certain floor.
All right, so what would you define as a penthouse? What floor number do you think?
Well, if we're in a high rise, probably above 10.
All right, pretty good idea. So greater than 10, greater than 1,000 square foot. So nice view, high rise penthouse. Anybody else online? And then we'll do a couple of people here. Go ahead.
I think maybe another one could be the combination between full baths and half baths. So say maybe you have like a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio, just to know what kind of bathroom you're actually getting.
Tell me just a little bit more. It sounds good, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So what I mean is like, so say you're going to get an apartment that they claim is two bathrooms, but one of them is a full bath and one of them is a half bath. It's not really as practical as having, let's say, 2 full baths and 1 half bath.
Oh, so, okay. All right. That sounds good. Thank you, Harrison. Anybody else online before we go in person? All right, in person, there was Mary? Mary.
So I was kind of thinking about the size. So like if there's an older person, it'd be harder for them to get around a bigger house. So like if the square footage is greater than 1,200 square feet.
So Mary says if the square footage is greater than 1,200 square feet, we'd want to classify it as a big house. So we want maybe big versus little. Maybe. Did you have an idea?
No.
No. So, and let me just throw in my idea, the one I was thinking about on my way to work this morning. I was thinking that there's open plan houses versus non-open plan houses. What's an open plan house? You walk into these places and there's like one room and the whole place is one room. And yeah, maybe there's a bathroom too, but it's like the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, everything is all just one giant room. And then there's sort of, I don't know, what's the opposite of open plan? Anyone have any idea the opposite of an open plan house? Is that closed plan or something? Regular, whatever. So we could see, you know, if you have like a 3,000 square foot house and there's 2 rooms, that's pretty much like an open plan, right? If you have a 3,000 square foot house with 12 rooms, that's definitely not an open plan house. So we can create some kind of dummy variable, whether it's open plan or not, and see if people like open plans. I don't know if they do, but what's the whole goal? The whole goal of the last 10 minutes exercise is to say, just because there are data doesn't mean you necessarily need to be limited by that amount of data. You can look at the data and actually come up with interesting other variables that will make your regression better. You can come up with other variables oftentimes from the data that will make your regression better. Last but not least, I don't know how many of you have ever gone to Zillow to look at the price of a house. One of the things Zillow does to add value is they have something called the walkability score. How far is this house? How much are you able to walk to a restaurant, to a supermarket, to a bar, to a library, something like that? And how do they do it? They look at the address. They look at things like 24 Houston Street, and they see how far that is from something that is useful, like a restaurant or a supermarket.
We just talked about doing that just to find the nearest key stop or transportation.
So once you know the address, it's relatively easy to find how close other things are. So that's the first thing. All right. Let me ask you real quick, Harrison, you're right below me. Are you still seeing the Excel file?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Now what I'd like to do is switch gears for the last 20 minutes of today's class, and I'd like all of us to create some dummy variables using column F. And the question is, how many multiple dummy variables do we create? So step 1, I'll be quiet here, is we need to create a pivot table. And the pivot table shows us how many different categories we need to consider. After we create the pivot table, then what we need to do is figure out, are there any categories we need to consolidate? And then we go and create the dummy variables. And after we create the dummy variables, the most important thing is to always drop 1. So we're going to do 3 things. I'll be quiet while you're creating the pivot table. That's it, you're done? Oh. I'll give everyone else another minute. Sure, go for it, Mary. So Mary is asking what a cluster type is. So it's pretty straightforward. We hit Control F and we type cluster. And there is 19 Carlton Street. So what the heck is a cluster? I was actually going to do this for other. What we do is I'm going to stop sharing right now. I'm going to share a different file, a different one. We'll open up Google. We bring up maps. And we type 19 Carlton Street, Carlton Street. Brookline, oh, that's Darrington, not Brookline. It was 19, right? Look at the picture. So here's what I think is going on, Mary. There's a whole bunch of houses, but it's not a row house. So they're all sort of clustered all together and they're all kind of sideways on the street. The other one I wanted to look at real quick was other. So let me search for other, Control F, other. And what we got here is 201 Freeman Street. Let me search again for other. Another 201 Freeman Street, 201 Freeman Street, 90 Park Street, 201 Freeman. So a whole bunch of 201 Freemans are listed as other. Are you seeing Google still? Great. So let's type 90, sorry, was it 201 Freeman? Freeman, I hope. And 201 Freeman looks kind of nice, doesn't it? Nice kind of brick house. Let's zoom in just a little bit. Why is 201 Freeman classified as other? What is it, or what was it? It used to be a church. And if we look at 90 Park Street, the other one, which was 90 Park Street. This used to be a church also. And the city didn't know how to classify these things. Let me tell you, I've been to 90 Park Street. Many of these churches have giant windows called rose windows. I don't know if you've ever been to a church with a giant circular stained glass window. I've been to one of the apartments with a rose window, and it is spectacular and terrible. Why is it spectacular? 3 stories, massive amounts of light, all colored coming in. But it's 2 rooms. There's this massive 3-story high room that's very narrow and a little bedroom up in the loft. I went in there with my wife. We looked at each other. We both went, wow, we don't want to live here. Anyways, so those are other, what other is like. Let me jump back to the spreadsheet. And let's create a pivot table. And for the pivot table, it's pretty straightforward. We want to take building style, drag it down to the rows, and then put a count of building style in the values. And now what we have here is we have about 11 different cases. And the question is, how do we consolidate the cases? There's two ways to consolidate. First, you know something about the neighborhoods. You know something about the buildings. Having spent 23 years in Brookline, there's really no difference between these row ends and row middle houses. That's just local knowledge. There's really not a lot of difference between high-rise, and mid-rise buildings in Brookline. And converted houses and double and triple deckers are pretty much also the same. But what if you don't have local knowledge? What if you just have an Excel spreadsheet? You have no idea what's going on. If you have no idea what's going on, then what you need to do is you need to do some statistical comparisons to see if they're relatively similar. So for example, let's drag rooms down to values also and come up with average. So I dragged rooms down, I pick value field settings, I pick average. I've reformatted the numbers. And we see is like duplexes, they have 7 rooms, but mid-rises only have like 4 rooms. Clearly a big difference. And yes, we can create the standard error and calculate if it's statistically significant at the 95% level. We can also do some other things, like elevators. Drag elevators down. Make that the average. And we can format this as a number. And we can see things like mid-rise and high-rise buildings have elevators, but everything else doesn't. The simple idea is you can create dummy variable categories, multiple dummy variable categories based on knowledge, or by using pivot tables or other summary statistics, you can create your own. So given we only have 11 minutes left, and given we don't have a lot of categories we can create in 11 minutes, let's just create a couple of categories here. The first category is going to be row. The second category is high-rise and mid-rise, basically elevator buildings. And the third category is going to be, where'd it go? Decker. And then the last category is all other, everyone else, everything else. So I'll give you a minute to go a little bit ahead of me, but can you create on the data sheet a set of multiple dummy variables for row houses, high-rise and mid-rise, deckers, double deckers, triple deckers? For those of you who live in Brighton, it's just apartments on top of each other with a porch in front or a porch in back, and everything else. And then we're going to run a regression before we end class today using these multiple dummy variables. I see lots of messages going by. Everyone's okay? Not okay? That's from before? Okay. All right, your job, Casey, is to make sure I spell things right. I spelled high-rise H-I in the class before this, confusing all kind of students. So watch me like a hawk. They're like, my data didn't come out as yours. And I was like, oh, because I spelled high H-I and you spelled high H-I-G-H. Oops. Okay. All right, for those of you who are still typing, if you could pay attention just for 10 seconds right now. I want to show you a quick Excel trick. No, this Excel trick will not be on the final exam. It will be on the Excel exam of life. We have 4 things right here, and as I just said to Casey, I have trouble remembering things exactly or spelling things exactly. So what I'd like to do is just put these labels on the other spreadsheet. How do I do that? The labels right now are vertical, so I can pick Control C, go to the data sheet. I put in my cursor in N1, but I do not want to pick paste. I do not want to pick paste. Instead, I want to pick home, and then under paste there's something called paste special. Under home there's paste special. Click on paste special, and then on the very bottom there is a button called transpose. Click on transpose. Transpose. What does transpose do? Transpose takes anything that's vertical and makes it horizontal, and takes anything you copied that's horizontal and makes it vertical. By picking OK, that nice column of words suddenly flips to a nice horizontal column, and I don't have to retype everything. I don't have to cut and paste things individually. Wow. Second, let's come up with some if statements for the row. Anybody online want to help me out here? Typing equal if. What would row be? All right, well, just type it in the chat in case it'll give you a class contribution. How's that? Equal if, left parenthesis, or, left parenthesis again, and we have 2 different row houses. One is row end and one is row middle, so it's going to be F2 is equal to double quote ROW dash END, that's row end, comma, F2 equals double quote ROW, is it dash MID middle? Is it mid or middle? Anybody? Back on the pivot table sheet.
It's middle.
Middle. Thank you, Chen. Excellent job. Please, Casey, take care of Chen. Row middle, close parenthesis, comma 1, comma 0. High rise and mid rise equal to F equal if, left parenthesis, or close open parenthesis, sorry, or open parenthesis, F2 is equal to double quote HIGH dash rise, comma, F2 is equal to double quote MID rise. Let me know if I'm spelling it wrong, anybody? Close parenthesis, comma 1, comma 0. Decker's the easiest one. Oh, I like Decker. Equal if, left parenthesis, F2 equals double quote Decker. That's it. Comma 1, comma 0. Did you get something that looks like this? So let me show you the first one. The first one is the if statement on the row. The second one is for the high rise. And the third one is for the Decker. Now I have 4 minutes left and I really want to run the regression. And what do we have? We have like 7 more categories to type, which is a really complex if statement. One of the great things is if you type these 3 properly, if you type the 3 properly, we can figure out what everything else is. And what's everything else? Equal 1 minus the sum of N2 through P2. 1 minus the sum of N2 through P2. Why? Because if anything is a 1 in row, high rise, or Decker, then we want everything else to be a 0. Conversely, if row, high rise, and Decker are all zeros, we want everything else to be a 1. So we can actually calculate the remaining case. We don't have to create a big complicated if statement. Does that make sense? Bottom right corner, we double click to copy everything down. And now we can run a regression. So we're going to run a regression where sales price is Y. And for the X variables, we'll do elevators all the way, including ease of access, to Decker. And what's the case we're going to drop? We'll drop 1 and we'll drop everything else. What we've done is we've taken data from the data set and we've created 2 different sets of variables. One was ease of access, and then a completely separate variables were row, high rise, and Decker. So we'll do data analysis, regression. The Y range is already set up, and the X range just has to be changed just a little bit to G1 through regression is not the way it's set up. It's supposed to be G1 through P. Let's try it again. G1 there it is. We'll pick OK. And what do we see? For T-stats, high rise seems really, really statistically significant, but row houses and Deckers don't. And what happens? High rise, people don't want to live in high rises. Holding everything else constant, they're less expensive. Ease of access, it also is now not statistically the similar as 0. It's statistically the same as 0. We can't tell it apart. But not only that, the ease of access has gone down to only about $11,000 from the $40,000 range. What does that say? Having an easy access apartment does not seem to add money, add value to a Brookline condominium. Maybe because there aren't that many old people living in Brookline. I don't know. So we have 30 seconds left. And what I'd like to say is, what did we do? We did a couple of things. Number one, we looked at the data set and we actually created more information than what we were given. We created some new variables that might help other people understand what's going on besides just bedrooms and bathrooms. And then second, we did multiple dummy variables. How do we create categories for multiple dummy variables? It's pretty straightforward. Either you know information because you happen to have some expertise, like, for example, movies. We've all seen lots of movies, so we know the different genres. Or we start adding information like average rooms, average elevators, and so trying to figure out which categories are similar and which categories are different. With that, it's exactly 1:10. I'm out of time. I want to say thank you very much. We'll see all of you hopefully on Friday, where on Friday we'll pick up things like R square and the standard error of the equation. Woo! I know, I'm excited. I hope you are too. The people in class are not looking excited.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Christina. So you're gone.